Today I thought I'd cover a way of conceptualizing your body which ties into this contraction and expansion proposition that I've been proposing. And so if you've been coming along to class, you know we've been doing a lot of core work and a lot of squeezing into the midline, even in chair like this, and then expanding out in all directions like a starfish. So adding to that, we do have these joints in our body, and you can stand or be seated for a second and just feel that you have two pairs, two hips, two shoulders, which are your proximal joints into the main frame of the body, if we call the torso the main frame. Two hips, two shoulders, and then from the shoulder, which is the proximal piece of the upper body carriage, the shoulder girdle carriage, you then have an elbow joint, which is let's call it the middle joint of the arm, and then you've got the hand and the wrist joint. We're going to just throw the fingers into the whole hand proposition. So you've really got three: proximal, middle, and we could call this distal or far away. And so when we do yoga poses or anything that you do during your day with your arms, you could consider the fact that if you lock the joints in the arms, the shoulder, the elbow, the wrist, and you can try this standing up just for fun. If you just hold out your arm, you're actually putting a lot of pressure into your shoulder joint. Now, if you start to bend the elbow down a little bit, like that, suddenly, and you relax the wrist a little bit, suddenly the weight of the arm is easier to carry. This is kind of obvious, but in other ways it's not. Now, down in the lower body, we've got these lower body appendages called legs. And so you've got these hip joints, which are the main or the proximal pieces of connection of your legs into your, we call it the axial skeleton, your torso. And you can go ahead and move those around if you want while you're listening to me yakking in little circles, little hula hoops, and feel those. Then, of course, you've got your knee joints. You could put your hands to your knees and do little circles there, and classic martial arts warm up for the knees, the feet. And then you've got your feet themselves and the ankles. So you could move your ankles. All very fascinating. So when you do a straight-legged posture, for example, a Trikonasana pose, and you lock the knee joints, you lock the arm joints, and then the proposition is to go down into this structure like a triangle that looks very pretty. You're actually placing quite a bit of strain potentially on the hip joints, particularly if we just isolate the legs for a second. And don't worry, we're going to start moving after this little exposition. The front hip. So as I start to hinge down into a triangle pose, and I've got my front knee locked, all the pressure, gravity pushing that foot, is going to rebound back into this lower hip, the left hip here. And so what I then have to do with that to mitigate or to not destroy that hip becomes of great consequence. So that's why when you're doing, say, a triangle pose, you could bend the knee or unlock it a little bit if it spared your body from pain and misery. So these are things that I want to play with a little bit today as we warm up. And as you move about your day, notice people and how they move, whether their legs are really stiff, are their arms, are they using their hands a lot. So if you're using your hand as the primary way to move into a pose, some people are handsy versus thinking the hand is relaxed and the main frame of the body, and then through the shoulder and then through the arm. So stand for a second and say I want to just move over to my right. I want to move and track from the waist, step out with the right foot, move the hips, move the spine, and then from that movement, I can move the arms out. Okay, so just maybe going from warrior two to warrior two here. And so now we're going back into our swiveling your feet, coming into the center line, and then extending out from the center line. But we have now additional interesting pieces, and that is the hips, shoulders, elbows, wrists, knees, and feet. Just move a little bit. You don't have to have a big stance like I have, but pretend you're doing some sort of a Tai Chi shift from one warrior two, not a grand locking in the shoulder joints, locking in the hip joints, but just a very open jointed. So see how easy you could feel in your hips, your shoulders, even your hands. So this is a little bit counter to old school, let's completely jam our arms. Let's pull our arm bones into our sockets. Let's pull our hip bones or our leg bones into our hips, right? Now, it's very difficult to breathe, first of all, and to move fluidly in a vinyasa-like fashion to the next side or the next posture becomes difficult. Okay, so that's the long-winded explanation of what I want to start covering. So let's go ahead and go on to our backs for a second. Have a strap handy if you need something under your head. Towel roll, and we'll start in Apanasana. So go ahead and first take both of your knees into your hands. Locate your sacrum on the mat. Your shoulder blade spines, so to speak. There's an actual linear spine of the shoulder blade or the scapula. Take a few breaths here, and you can flex and move your feet and your ankles in dorsi and plantar flexion. Now go ahead and draw the knees a little toward you. Inhale and exhale, let them release away. You can use your hands to do this and just check in with your low back. Start to engage your transverse abdominals as you inhale and draw the knees toward you. Let the hip flexors and the transverse abdominals start to help your hands draw your knees a few inches in toward you. Exhale, release the knees away. If you're hardcore, you could do this without your hands and just moving the tailbone off the ground and then back to the ground. Okay, let's drop the feet down like we're going to do bridge pose and just roll the hips away from us on inhale now, arching your low back slightly, rolling your shoulders back, and exhale, let the low back flatten to the mat. And just move the tailbone back and forth. And as you do this 10 or 20 times, start to come into the rhythm of your breath as a measure or a way to dictate how slow or fast you're moving. Big inhale, opens the chest, rolls the hips forward. Exhale, hips roll back. And close your eyes now as you roll and rock on your sacrum and feel your two hips evenly measured and This is your proximal piece of your leg from which the signals will be sent through the knee and through the foot. So let's slide the left leg along the mat and take both hands around the bending right knee for Apanasana. Then you can start to tone the left leg as it lays along the mat. Inhale, draw the right knee toward you gently, like we were just doing with both knees. Exhale, glide it away. And at first, holding and guiding the knee with your hand, and then reminding yourself to use your breath. As you inhale, pull the right knee toward you slightly. Exhale, move it away. And then challenge yourself. See if you can release your hands and arms down limply to the ground and use your core muscles, your hip flexor, psoas, etc., to just move the knee toward you and away. Maybe your body dictates that you have to keep your hands loosely helping. Again, with the breath. Now, can you make little circles? Come toward you up the midline of the body with that right knee. Exhale, let the knee go a little bit out to the right, and then forward, and just start to loop. Could be a small loop, could be a big loop. Again, if you need to keep holding or keep a little hold of your right knee with your hands, that's fine. But try to let the leg, the breath, and the muscles around that proximal piece of the leg, the right hip, work. Now switch directions. Inhale from the outer side, the right side. Exhale, move the right knee over to the left and through the midline. And all we're doing is checking with the hips. You could do this without your hands. Absolutely fine. Can you feel how your hip, as you circle, is intersecting and interacting with your sacrum and the joints of the low back? And make that feel comfortable. Okay, so let's go ahead and switch and slide the right leg long, draw the left knee in, hold it with both hands, inhale, upswing, move the knee toward your body, exhale away, and just start to feel in a very Tai Chi-like way. So the faster you move, which seems to be our culture, fast is good, the less able you are to really feel the deep pieces of the exercise. So all the muscles around the hip and how they connect into the abdominal core. And now we're going to make circles coming up the midline and toward us on inhale, and then moving out to the left and forward on exhale. Again, you can hold your knee, you can go freestyle, handless, and just work with your breath. You may get a few nice openings in your left sacroiliac joint. I'm getting a few pops in my cranky left lumbar spine, and then switch directions. And you're just sensing, feeling the hip joint. Okay, so let's release that leg, slide both legs long, and go ahead and place your hands now, the palms on your frontal hips, and see if they haven't lit up a little bit. Lit up in a good way, so that now they've been moved, they've been encouraged to receive some synovial fluid, blood flow, and all of that. Okay, so let's go back now and take the right knee, and we're going to bind our hands in the back of the hamstring and interlace the hands. And inhale, we're going to just gently draw the knee toward us. Exhale, we're going to straighten that right leg to the sky. Inhale, bend. Draw the knee toward us a little bit. Exhale, shoot the leg up. And now if you can just push it forward into your hands a bit. Very simple exercise. And those of you who are a bicyclist, go ahead and roll off to one side if you're not seeing or if I'm not clearly verbally articulating this. Basically, the bicycle riding motion of my left hip laying down on the ground, my right hip pulling up as the knee pulls toward me. The leg straightens, exhale, and moves forward and around a little, like I'm pedaling a bicycle with one leg. This is simple but profound. And try to move or sense as you do this 5 or 10 more times how much your mind is going to your foot, which is the typical response. That the distal pieces, the feet and the hands, are the prize, puppies, and how much you can stay in the motion of the hip, the belly, and let that flow through the knee and the foot. Okay, then you can stay and bind that straightened right leg with both hands. And as you breathe into what's now our classic hamstring stretch on our back, again, notice the joints, the hip, the knee, the ankle, and try to balance your attention with your breath in those areas. It's just a conceit, if you will, but a useful one to integrate the body and the leg. Another way to think of it now, if you could release your hands and let your leg be straight to the sky, is to imagine filling that leg with helium. Filling that leg with your breath from the hip through the knee and through the foot. Okay, simple stuff. Drop the right leg, up comes the left. We bind around the upper hamstring where it joins the knee. Your hands stitching together. And then we're going to pedal the bicycle with the left leg. Inhale, up comes the knee toward us and the hip a little. Exhale, we straighten the leg to the sky and push forward. You get the picture, and now we just start to slowly pedal our bicycle. And you start to feel as you do this and move slowly, the articulation of hip joint, knee joint, foot. We could get into a whole discussion of the feet, the bones of the feet, but today I don't want to do too much. It's just feeling hip, knee, foot. And again, if you're like me, I'm kind of in my feet a lot. I like to arch my feet. I like to keep them strong. That's all good. But not at the sake of forsaking the hip as the primary mothership of the leg. Then we straighten our left leg with our bind. And now I breathe through that left hip, through the knee, through the foot. And it's useful. Release, straighten both legs. Again, placing your hands on your fronts of your hips. And see if you can feel how much awareness you have in the hips. Now the knees and the feet. Okay, let's try another pose. Everything you've done before, but maybe not in this way. We're going to do bridge pose, but we're going to try to move from the hips to the knees to the feet with our awareness. So first, you just take away your head cushion if you had it, and you start to rock and roll on your sacrum. Inhale the hips moving forward and exhale back. And the next time you roll the hips forward, lift the hips up. And then exhale, place them down. Inhale, lift the hips up. And then down. Now
Now, as you do this, and you can continue to move at your own pace, we're going to do about 10 or 20. I want you to feel that we're moving from an awareness of the hips and the neutral hip position, neither too much arch in the low back or tilt, bad dog tilt, that as you come up, you're pressing or trying to move your hips forward toward the knees, and then from the knees into an awareness of the feet on the ground. And then the next time you come up, stay up. You can even place your hands on your frontal hips if you've got enough skill, and you're anchored with your shoulders. Don't look from side to side once you're up. Now, instead of letting the hips do all the work, try to send your awareness forward to the knees and then down to the feet. And then try to draw the feet back toward you a little bit. So now the chain of the hips, the knees, the feet is complete. Come down and then draw your knees in toward your hands and take a little squeeze of the knees in case there were any imperfections. Now let's do that movement again. You can roll off to the side and watch if you want. And what if we are moving with the arms? Okay, so let's just work with the arms a little bit as we did with the legs a moment ago. We're going to reach up to the sky with the arms. We're going to grab our right wrist with our left hand and inhale. Give it a pull. Exhale, we're going to release and start to drop and bend the right elbow down, letting the right arm start to go limp. Inhale, we stretch the right arm, tugging on the wrist. With the left hand, exhale, we just let that arm go limp. And all you're doing is gently pulling on the arm. You feel the stretch through the shoulder, and then exhale, release. Really simple, and then just let the arm lay down on the ground for a second. Notice the quality of the arms, and the right arm should feel a little more integrated, maybe disintegrated in its integration or relaxed. Now we reach up to the sky with both arms. We grab our right wrist, or left wrist rather, with our right hand. Inhale, we tug on the left arm, stretching it along the scapula, and the scapula fascia to the spine gets stretched. Exhale, we release, bending the left elbow down to the ground. And you get the picture. Just stretch and lengthen. Inhale and exhale. Now we're doing this with the arm assist, pulling on the wrist, but we really wouldn't have to. Just giving you a little bit of a stretch here initially. You can see as that arm lays limp, the shoulder falls down, the elbow falls down, and then drop the whole arm down. And see how both arms now have a quality of relaxation. So now let's try that bridge pose again, but from a perspective of the arms. So the arms are laying slightly diagonal, floating off the hips, about 6 inches, palms to the sky. And first, before you lift your hips, inhale, I want you to roll your sacrum forward and feel your chest open. Feel the spines or the backs of your shoulder blades plant. The front of the shoulder blades are open. And exhale, as you lower your hips back toward you, feel that the shoulders relax and maybe even in an extreme way would move toward one another, the fronts of the shoulders. Inhale, hips roll forward, chest opens, shoulders roll back. Exhale, flatten your low back, and then almost like you're shrugging your shoulders forward and lifting them off the mat. Now I want you to just feel the shoulder moving forward and back. Okay, so the next time you inhale, your hips roll away from you. They start to lift. The shoulders roll back. Really important that you feel more pressure or connection to the ground with the shoulders than you do with the back of the head. And then start to move your awareness from the shoulder out through the elbow joints and into the back of the wrist joints. So the whole arm lights up and expands. And then don't forget about the hips expanding their energy through the knees and to the feet. And so now the arms and the legs are, in a sense, inflated. And the recipient, which is wonderful when you get it, is that your torso is like a helium balloon. It's floating up through the extension, the expansion of the limbs in a very nice way. Then we come down and hug our knees into our body. You can roll on your low back in little circles and then reverse directions. Okay, so let's, without belaboring that, it was a simple exercise with profound consequences. Let's go ahead and rock and roll up to seated. And then let's come to standing. And go back to our original proposition. So, we'll do a little bit of work either with the chair or the wall. And so choose which you have at your disposal. And you're either going to take a chair dog or a wall dog. I'm going to show chair dog. And I've got my chair in front of me. I'm going to put my hands on top of it. And I'm going to walk my feet back and start to come into a little bit of a squat like this. Okay? So make sure when you do your little squat like this that there's not a lot of pressure on the knees. So a good chair pose would be that your hips are going back enough to relieve any pressure on the knee joints as you get into a squat. If you're too far forward like this, you're going to stress your knees. Okay? So now what about the hands? If the arms are straightened, what happens to the shoulders? Can we soften the shoulders and the elbows? And then exhale, straighten your legs. Inhale, drop to chair. I'm a little far away. And all I'm doing is bending my knees as I sink down and then straightening. And as I place my hands on the chair, it could be the wall, I want to feel the articulation of the shoulder through the elbow, through the hand. So that the joints are able to move. And I have options. I can roll my shoulders back as I sit low in my chair pose. I can roll them forward as I stand up. And I'm going to walk the feet back, get into that downward dog with the chair. And the value here as I start to bend and straighten the legs, inhaling, looking toward the chair, exhale, looking down, is that there's not a lot of pressure on the shoulder joints. You don't have to bend your knees too much, just a little vinyasa movement. And so in a normal downward dog, gravity would assess a lot of pressure into the shoulder joint. And here we can move, bending our elbows, bending our knees, looking forward. And exhale, we're expanding, straightening our legs and arms. With this awareness of moving out from the main frame of the body, through the shoulders and hips, from the hips through the knees, through the feet, from the shoulders through the elbows, through the hands. More like an expanding balloon. I'm going to get a little closer so that I'm not really locking these joints. This is just an important distinction. I'm not locking my shoulders, not locking my knees. I'm thinking that I can communicate through these joint capsules, cavities, through to the feet, through to the hands. Then when you hold your wall dog or your chair dog for a few breaths, are you locking into those joints, or can you expand with your breath through the hips, through the knees, through the feet, like helium, through the shoulders? The chest, of course, is full with breath, lungs, through the elbow joints and through the hands. Let's take a forward fold now, hands down, bend the knees, hold the opposite elbows. Again, softening the knees allows the hips to communicate through the knees to the feet. Drop your hands down. The arms are relaxed. So the shoulders, the elbows, and the hands can feel also integrated. And then roll up to standing. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a Warrior Two pose as I did earlier in class. And we're going to take our left foot out as the lead foot, our right foot back. And then let the arms just be like they're holding a ball down in front of you. As you inhale, you're going to spread your wings out, expanding from the shoulders, through the elbows, through the hands, and then exhale, you're going to come back down. Okay? Inhale, let the filling of the lungs through the shoulder joints, elbows, a little bit soft, hands higher than shoulders, and exhale. Now, like we did on Monday, you can straighten the front leg as the arms straighten on inhale, and exhale, dip and bend. So if you feel like you're in a dance class, that's okay. But all I want you to do, this is kind of a simple class, but not really. I want you to feel that when you straighten your appendages, you're not locking those joints too much. You're still able here with straightening legs and arms to feel all three joints, the proximal joint of the hip, through the knee, through the feet, the proximal upper body joint of the shoulder, through the elbow, through the hands. Then as you sink into Warrior Two, drawing into your core muscles, tightening your transverse abdominals, bend the elbows just slightly. Bend the elbows slightly. I know this is like sacrilege. And see if you can bear the weight a little bit better in the shoulders. Reverse Warrior, inhale. Exhale, now you can come into side angle. But watch, we're gonna do a crawl stroke. And I'm gonna take this right arm and just move it. And I wanna feel the relaxed elbow and hand, the articulation of the shoulder joint, the elbow joint, and the wrist joint. Very non-yoga. And if I want to straighten on inhale, the front leg, and exhale, go for a little crawl. Inhale and exhale. And if you do this slowly like a Tai Chi master, you're going to feel the effervescence, almost like the froth of a wave breaking, move through your body, up from the belly, and then with this soft, jointed yoga, I'm getting the synovial fluid moving. I'm doing strength work. If I want to hold the pose now and lock it out, lock it in like a 30-year mortgage. I haven't told any bad jokes in a while. Then I got to be careful. Where do you go here? Okay, I'm locking. Are you locking into that and stressing that left hip? So you have to keep the expansion through the hips, through the knees, through the feet, moving out like a helium balloon to fly or float. Let's just go to the other side, taking the feet to parallel.
Switching right foot. How wide are your feet? That's up to your body. Now, if you have a hip back issue, you got to tighten it up. Forget about it. Okay, so here's our warrior two, but we're gonna Balanchine it. I don't know if Ann is here today, George Balanchine, and we're gonna expand this helium balloon at the lungs. The lungs fill, they open the shoulder joints, the elbow joints, and exhale. Feels quite wonderful when you get it. It's like the joints and the arms are really moving from the breath. Now we could add to this, we can straighten the front leg as we starfish everything, and then exhale. We collect into the middle. Expand out from the middle, through the hip, shoulder joints out to the distal pieces without locking, and just flow with your breath. Okay, so there's a temptation among us athletes, if you've been doing yoga a long time, to really jam into the joints. And that's not going to work after a while. It's not going to serve the body well in the long run. Plus, as we now drop into our pose, bending our elbows slightly, maybe just imperceptibly so that the yoga teacher can't see the sneaky technology of bent elbows, allowing the shoulders to relax and the shoulder blades to knit deep down and anchor into the spine. There, I just got a nice neck release from the shoulders. Reversing warrior, inhale, and then exhale, you can put that right forearm down, or you can use your chair. Now let's go for a little crawl stroke with that left arm. Sweeping back, inhale, exhale, the wave goes forward. Can you feel the movement of the left shoulder, keeping your left wrist soft and relaxed, the elbow, and even the neck moves with the shoulder as well. Looking down as the hand comes down, looking back, just as you would if you were a swimmer. So if Alba's swimming in the Caribbean, just going to help her today with her swimming practice. Of course, you could come up and go down and start to straighten the front leg. Inhale, the breath lifts you up, and exhale. And then you could hold the Parsvakonasana. You could come into the pose, but then what happens? Do you check out with your expansion through the hips, through the knees to the feet, and crush the low back of the right hip? So this is where the real art comes in. Can I continue to be like a helium expanding balloon when the poses get extended? Okay, let's come back to center and tighten up the feet a little bit. So Prasarita Padottanasana, you could always take a chair in front of you if you wanted. Another great way to destroy your knees and tear your hamstrings. So let's soften the knees. And what did people used to do? They used to jump the feet together and out, which seems a little bit untenable for some and also silly for others. But what that would do was to get the muscles along the hips, the knees, and the feet ready to go. So if you get into this pose, feet are parallel, weight is evenly transferred to the inner and outer parts of the feet. Take your hands to your hips, bend your knees a little bit, and we're going to sink down like we're riding on a horse. Inhale, straighten the legs and feel the hips move out. Expand through the knees into the feet. Exhale, sink down. This is too wide. Rein it in. Inhale, stand, exhale, drop. Inhale, stand, exhale, drop. And watch the position of the sacrum and the spine so the knees don't get stressed as you drop down toward goddess pose. So if you were against a wall, if I were to plant my back against a wall, it would be relatively straight. It's like a nice line of a string from the top of my head down to my tailbone. Next time we drop down, we're gonna, if we have a chair, we're gonna take hands to chair, if not hands to waist. Inhale, and exhale, start to forward fold. Some of you could place your head on the chair. Others, you don't need it. Drop your head, drop your hands to the floor. Lift to a flat back and let your hips expand through your knees out to your feet. Get that expansion through the legs without locking. Then exhale, drop down, take your posture. Again, don't lock the knees, keep them soft so that you can feel the hips communicating through the knees, through the feet. Any hand positions, you can grab your outer ankles and draw up. But again, too much stress. If you're yanking on the body and on the hips, if there's pressure in any one of those joints that's excessive, try to just back off a little bit and think of expanding through the hips, through the knees, through the feet, expanding from the shoulders, through the elbows, through the hands. My favorite one, if you come to a flat back, bend your knees, is the wide-legged prostrata meets downward dog. I walk my hands forward, I drop the head and straighten the legs. Now I'm gonna have to just breathe, open the shoulders, open the chest. And then I walk the hands back, bend the knees, take one hand to one hip, the other hand to the other hip, and come up. Very good. Let's try maybe one or two more. I know it's been a long-winded exposition. So coming into triangle pose, and then maybe if you have a wall near you, as I do, a nice Ardha Chandrasana. We'll try to put this theory into practice. So if you need a chair for your hand, you need a chair for your right hand as we drop into left-sided Trikonasana, and or a yoga block, you can have it there. So again, as I described, and a few folks came in late, earlier in class, the issue of the problem in the extended poses, particularly with arms and legs completely open and extended, is in the proximal joint cavities, shoulders and hips. In this case, that left hip is really the big culprit, and it leads to all sorts of problems. I'm not going to scare people with war stories. So let's set up and let's take a modest proposal. We're going to do our little George Balanchine move with a warrior two and the arms down in front of you like you have a balloon capacity. Arms are merely extensions of these two lungs you have, and they're just ready to go. And the inhale fills the lungs and the back ribs, and it opens the arms, and it transfers and straightens the front leg. And exhale, you come down. So all I want you to do as a beginner, you're also able to track that front knee and where it's going right over the front foot. And then the next time you come up, start to come down. Maybe just get the hand to the chair or the shin like that. I'm going to keep this front knee bent. And then we're going to go for a swim as we did earlier in class. Again, if you're a beginner, you can just almost take the left arm inside the left knee like that. And as you inhale, start to play with extending up into triangle pose. Extending from through the hips, through the shoulders. Okay? And you take it to your measure. As your breath, your pranayama practice gets more evolved, the prana, the breath, is able to move out from the lungs through the hips, through the joints, and your whole body is like a balloon. Those that want the Ardha Chandrasana, right hand to hip, look down and reach forward with your left fingertips. Could be to the chair or block. Take a little hop and you can take Ardha Chandrasana. I've got this wall behind me to drive my right heel into. But I'm paying particular attention to the hip. The right hip, the left hip, softening the knees, and then filling out from the hips, through the knees, through the feet, and then through the shoulders, through the elbows, through the hands, like a giant filling balloon. Okay? So let's come down and try the other side. If you do yoga and you feel like your hips and shoulders get destroyed, this may be the reason why. And it takes practice to bring this concept into play, but I think it's very useful. So let's take the right foot forward. Normal triangle pose, old school. We're gonna lock the joints out. We're gonna dive down, hope for the best, and hope something doesn't go crack. But we're not stick figures. So we gotta move from the joints, particularly in the morning. We're gonna just take our arms down and think of the arms, two arms like emissaries of the lungs, and bend the front knee. As you inhale, let the arms start to come up, front leg to straighten. Exhale, come down. Very simple and yet not. I've got to now take my breath and use it to expand out into the limbs. And then I come down into my version of triangle pose. So I'm going to ask you to bend the front knee slightly to start. You can take the right hand inside the knee for pressure. You can take the hand to a block or a chair. For that matter, you can even come right back down to Parsvottanasana. Go to the shin, whatever works for you. And then we're going to go for a swim. We're going to let that arm go forward. We're going to bend the front knee even more. Inhale, we're going to straighten and reach up to the sky. So find a comfortable position. I could micro move. I could be on a chair like this. And it's so non-stressful to the joints. And yet the expansion through the hips, the knees, the feet, shoulders, arm, becomes the real delight. It gets so expansive on the inhale that it's easy to just pluck yourself up. Bring the feet to parallel. Exhale. Take a little swim over to the other side. Inhale. And now I'm showing off and showing you how you could combine the two sides. Little swim, little float. Expansion up through the joints. I switch feet. I go for a swim over to the other side. Then I bring my lungs into my hips, my shoulders, through the knees, through the feet, which push into the ground and spring me over. And this is how yoga should work.
Vinyasa Yoga. Breath fills, lightens the body. Okay, then if you wanted to come to Ardha Chandrasana on this side, that's your prerogative. Do it in a way that's expansive. Take a little hop and then bring your inhale into the back ribs, down to the back, lower back, through the hips, through the legs, through the knees, through the feet, through the shoulders. Expand using your lungs, using your breath. Coming back to center. One more Prasarita. Drop into your horse stance. And let's take goddess pose as we did on Monday. Arms out to the side, inhale. And exhale, close. Just a little rib opening exercise. And then hands to hips, inhale. Exhale, you're going to drop down. You can keep your knees bent. Walk your hands out to that wide-legged down dog. Drop your head. You can soften the knees and then just breathe in through the hips, through the knees, through the feet. Then breathe up through the ribs, through the shoulders, through the elbows, through the hands. You can walk your hands back to Prasarita. You can walk your hands through the legs. Put your head on the ground. Do your headstand. And then release. Let's have a seat and wrap it up where we started, doing a little extended leg. So grab a strap if you've got it, and then we'll close off class. Right leg comes up, strap around the right leg. Inhale, now you should be fully versed in extending your breath through your hips and legs. And exhale, the right leg goes out to the ground. As you go to the ground, don't show off and try to touch the ground if it's not serving you well, if you've lost control of the breath through the hip and the hip into the back. It all has to be integrated. Come back to center, switch hands on the strap, and left hand holds strap ends, inhale, and the right leg goes over to the left. Then we switch sides. Left leg in the strap, up you go. Left hand holds, inhale, expand through the hip, the knee, the foot, exhale out to the side. Keep expanding through the hips, the knees, the feet, the shoulders, the arms, everything expanding. Inhale, the leg comes up to the top, switch hands. Right hand on strap ends, inhale, and exhale, cross over the body. I've got a gainy left hip now, so I gotta just breathe into it and not go too far across. And then release. Shavasana, or any final poses you'd like to do. A great one is just to squeeze and release the body. Think of squeezing into the joints, the fists, the feet, and then release. Check in, do a little body scan as you lay in Shavasana with the hips and the shoulders. You can place your hands on the frontal hip bones again, as we did earlier in class. Get them to relax, maybe even shake them or pulsate them. You can cross your arms to your shoulders like you're just shaking your body from left to right to get them to relax. And then you can place a hand on your belly and on your chest and just gently shake the body from left to right there so the spine relaxes. And then you should feel fully relaxed. Stay there as long as you like, enjoying the fruits of your practice. But just for the sake of the 9 a.m. workforce, I'll come up and close off class with a minute to spare. Namaste.